Hi there, Rusty Drift RC here. Today on my bench I've got a Super Clodbuster I just bought. I'm going to open this up and get started on the build here. Been wanting one of these for a long time. This one comes with the ESC, twin motors, four-wheel steering, and here we go. I'm going to open up and see what we got. Alright, I've got the top off the box. This box is huge. I could actually fit four of my MO5 cars, four MO5s in here, fully built, and have room left over. It looks like a third of the box is just tire. I mean, these tires are just massive. Okay, so I started off by binding my receiver and centering my servo. Then I've installed the servo horn with two of the 6mm ball studs. This is one of the places where I've already started making some modifications. The original servo horn, a little bit smaller, the distance between the two holes. I went ahead and increased that to give it a little more throw on the steering, so that it hopefully it'll turn a little better. Next, I put together the steering rods. Now you got to make sure that the ends are perpendicular to each other, and the distance between the two ends is going to be 126 millimeters. And the servo mounting plate, A5 I believe it is. I'm going to go ahead and mount that up. Now we're going to go ahead and mount the steering rods onto the servo horn. Just go ahead and grab your pliers and just kind of pop those on. Okay. Then I'm going to grab four of the 8mm balls and the these two chassis braces here. These are going to go in the side of the chassis there. Those are where the suspension arms attach, and they're going to thread into these on the inside. Okay, and then we're going to move on to the other side. Same thing. Okay. And then we got another brace. It's going to go up inside here. Like that. Okay, this brace wasn't on the original Clodbuster. But it's on the Super Clodbuster. You'll see that little opening there for where the nut would normally go, and this brace takes the place of that nut, of those nuts, and also adds a little strength. And then you've got these 6mm balls, four of those, and we're going to thread into that. Okay, next we've got the bottom plate here. I believe it's A3, and it's going to go on just like that there. I'm going to use a couple 4 10mm screws to hold that in place. And on the other side, in the other side here, there's a hex opening there where the nuts will go, and they'll hold that opening there will hold the nut for you while you tighten the screws. Alright, at this point you can install the front bumper, but I don't think I'm going to install that now because I'm using a different body and I may not use that. Then the body mounts, the front body mount, the cross brace here. All right, number A1, and then the body mount posts. These are C3 or C4, the longer posts for the front. Go there, and you've got your screws that go up to the bottom there to hold those in place. And for the rear body mounts, you've got A6 for the cross piece, and C3 is the shorter body posts. And go ahead and put the 4 screws in there, hold those on, and you've got all 4 body posts in place. Right? I'm going to take your servo. All right, yeah, this direction. Front of the truck over here. And you're going to put the top one is going to go towards the front, and the bottom one is going to go towards the back. Gonna slide those down through the slots in the chassis there, and there, and up through the bottom. You've got 3 holes here. You're going to use another 3 by 12 screws in those holes, and tighten those down to mount the servo in place. Alright, now we're going to start attaching the battery holder. We're going to take part A2 and C5. It's a spacer there, basically to take up space in there for the battery. That's going to go down in there and held in with 2 screws. Alright, and that's going to attach to the side of the chassis there using a couple of these 12 millimeter long machine screws and serrated nuts on the back side. On the back side, these serrated nuts. Okay, and there you have it, all 4 tightened down. Alright, now I'm going to start working on the axles. Remember that this step you're going to have to do twice because the front and rear axles are the same. You're going to need your E5 parts, E1 parts, and there's going to be 4 of them. Each axle, front and rear, is going to need a set of the shafts. Make sure you've got 1 long and 1 short. Alright, and you get started. Alright, we're going to take and put an E-clip on the one end here with the cross piece. Alright, now a little bit of grease on the axle where the bearings or bushings are going to ride. If you're on one of your housings here, bearing on either end. You get one of these washers over the shaft to the E-clip. Go ahead and stick it through. Another washer and another E-clip. Okay, now go ahead and do this 3 more times so you have 2 long and 2 short all assembled. Next, we're going to take the gearbox halves, part number B10. I'm going to do this twice. Take the axle with the shorter shaft, and that's going to go in there. Make sure that you line up that pin with the hole, with a little hole, and that'll snap in. And you've got 12 millimeter screws that are going to go in through the back side of the gearbox here. got your serrated nuts that are going to go on the outside, and tighten those down, all 4 of those. Okay, now I've got both those done, all 4 screws on each one. Alright, now I'm going to use the longer halves, the longer shaft halves, and you're going to grab the other gearbox half. This is part B9, and same thing, make sure you line up the pin on the axle there with the alignment hole on the on there, and go ahead and attach those with 4 of the 12mm screws and the serrated nuts. Next, we're going to start adding the gears into the gearbox halves. The halves that have the longer shaft, you're going to start by grabbing that half there, opening up your gear bags, and you've got two different gears here. We're going to start with the shorter gear. These 2 bearings, the larger bearing, and then the smaller one. These are like an 850 and a 1260 on the back there. And you've got these shafts here in the shaft bag. There's a step on them. You're going to need 4 for this step, 2 for each gearbox. Go ahead and put that through like that, and then it goes into that hole inside the recess there. Okay, and then next you're going to take the larger gear. Again, you're going to have the smaller 850 bearing here, and then part number B12 off the parts tree is a black plastic spacer, goes down in the hole there, and then the larger 1260 bearing, the shaft, and that goes into this hole right here. Okay, like that. And then make sure you get all your gears greased up good. Okay, now you're going to start to put together the differentials. You're going to have to put together 2 of these. Okay, you need your main differential gear here. You've got 3 of these small shafts for the spider gears. Okay, and 3 spider gears. You're going to go ahead and put a little bit of grease on the shafts and install all 3 of the spider gears, and the shafts go right into the little slots. And then you're going to take the outer gears here. Those go just like this. Again, make sure you put some good amount of grease on them first. Okay, and then you've got these brass joints here. You've got a hex that goes into the gear here, and the inside is splined to go over the axle shafts. We're going on each side here, just like that. Okay, now both these diffs are built. You want to go ahead and put those onto the axle shaft. Go ahead and slip that brass joint right over top of there. And you'll, okay, and then all set. Okay, now before you put the gearbox halves together, remember there's a nut that goes in that recess right there. If you forget that, you're going to be disassembling this to put it back in later. Just go ahead and put them together. Now you might have to spin the axle just a little bit to get the splines to line up. Up top, 2 30mm screws and nuts in the little recesses. Here the 15mm screws, 2 of them, and then 1 12mm screw on the end. Okay, now you want to put the pinion gear on both motors. Use the tool that came in the kit to make sure you've got the spacing right, and make sure you put some thread lock on the screw Okay, then you want to take part number B7, the motor mounting plate here, and your 30 millimeter screws through that plate, 25 millimeter spacers on those screws, and take the gearbox here, the side that has the rectangular hole, and you're going to go ahead and put those through so that the notch is up and on the outside here, and you'll see an empty hole there. Put that through there. Go ahead and stick the motor in the other side and tighten it up. Make sure you've got the gears aligned, and then give it a test spin it to make sure everything moves freely. Next, you're going to take part number B7, this little bracket here, and a 10 millimeter screw through the bracket and mount it in the hole there by the notch in that motor plate. And there's a little tab and a little hole that'll help align it. Go ahead and tighten that down and do that on both gearboxes. And then you've got a 20 millimeter screw through the gearbox and another nut on the back side there to tighten down. Next, to start on the suspension arms here, you're going to need parts C8 and C10. Pick that up here, and you need on each arm you're going to need 2 of the 5 millimeter ball studs. Those are going to go through the top holes here in the arm, and they're going to have 2 captured nuts on the back side. Okay, those will go down in the in those recesses there, and then tighten them all up. And now to install these arms on the axle, when you put it on, you're gonna have to put it on over the ball, or over the axle part here, and pull it over to the ball, and rotate it a little bit there to get it on. You're going to use part number C1 right here, and that's going to hold it in place. You're going to put it on this side of the ball there. Make sure you put a little bit of grease on that ball on the axle before you assemble it. You're going to use 3 20 millimeter screws and nuts to hold those together. You can get to the 2 bottom ones easy and just rotate it the arm to be able to get to the top screw. Alright, next you got to attach the lateral arms. Use F8 and F9. We're going to attach right there on those arms using 12 millimeter self-tapping screws. It's going to end up looking like this when you're done with that. Then also part number C6 is going to go on the arms here right at the axle, and in that gap there. It's just going to slide in. It's going to slide down and fill that gap and complete it to hold that around the axle. And again, 2 of those 12 millimeter tapping screws holding that in, and do the same on the other side. And that'll complete the axle assembly for now. Alright, now I'm going to install the axle stays. You've got 2 different sizes, a long one and a short one. The short one goes on the non-motor side of the axle there, and I'm going to attach it with a 6 millimeter machine screw here. No screw on this end for now. And the long one goes on the motor side. Same thing, a 6 millimeter screw. And then you're going to want to take a 12 millimeter self-tapping screw and a washer and attach that bracket there. It's going to be your anti-rotate for your axle. Right there. Next, we're going to start with the steering knuckles, or the uprights. You're going to have D1 and D2. You have 2 of each. Alright, with all 4 knuckles, you start off with the with this axle shaft here, the wheel axle. 1 bearing. Stick that through all the way. Press the bearing in good. Another bearing on the back side here, on the wheel side. Washer and an E-clip. So it's going to look like this. Okay. Then on part D2, use 1 nut and the 6mm ball. And on D1, you're going to use the ball nut and then another 6mm ball. Okay, now we're going to start assembling the steering linkage. You're going to make 2 long ones here. Rod ends are part number F7. The long ones are going to be about 118 millimeters from the base of the rod end to the base of the other rod end, and the short ones are going to be 45 millimeters. Then you want to start assembling the servo saver here. Part number B6, you're going to use one of the 6mm balls and a nut in the back here on the center hole there. You get 2 of those. And on B2, you're going to use just 1 nut, one of the 6mm balls and 1 nut. Alright, now to install the steering knuckles or the uprights here, you want to make sure you use a washer on the top and bottom of the holes there. You want to hold those kind of in place and put them on. Slide the axles in like that. You might have to turn the axle a little bit to get the axles to line up so it'll fall in place. You're going to go ahead and use 2 step screws, 1 top and 1 bottom, to hold that in place. Remember, there's going to be D2 on this side and D1 on this side over here. And then you're going to snap your long tie rod on the bottom ball studs. Alright, for the servo saver assembly, you start with part number B6 that we had assembled earlier. Take 30mm bolt, go up through there, and the head of the bolt's going to be captured in the bottom of that part. It's going to go up through the hole in the axle there. And part number B2 is going to go over top of that. That notch is going to engage with the wedge on the other part. On the rear axle, you want it facing this direction, away from the motor. And on the front axle, it's going to be on the motor side. Go ahead and drop 1 spring over the bolt there, and then 1 of these brass collars over top again. And then you're going to use these 3mm lock nuts to hold that together. Just tighten that lock nut down. Now they're recommending to have about 3.5mm worth of thread sticking out on top of the lock nut as a good starting point for the tension on that. But you know, you can go a little tighter if you want the servo saver tighter, or looser if you want it looser. Now attach the shorter steering link from the knuckle to the servo saver. Alright, now you're going to use parts F1, F2, and F3. You're going to use some of the 15 millimeter screws and the serrated lock nuts, and you're going to assemble the axle guards here. Now to install these guards on the axle, up top we're going to mount it through the hole at the top of that metal axle stay on both sides. And on the bottom there's two mounting points at the bottom of the axle. Alright, now to install the axles onto the chassis, you're going to take these ball plates and put them onto the those balls right there, one on each side of the truck here. You're going to install this end of the arm over the ball and put 3 of the 6 millimeter screws in there to hold it in place. The motor wires get fed down through the hole in the chassis there. Same thing on the other side. And then these lateral arms pop onto these balls right here. Alright, now at both the front and the rear of the truck, we want to connect that steering linkage to the servo saver on both ends of the truck. The shocks are just a basic friction damper unit. To get those built, you're going to start off with one of the shock shafts lightly greased. Take the shock body, put the shaft through. There's a couple pieces of rubber tubing which you're going to cut into 19 millimeter sections. Slide one over. It's kind of going to act as a stop on the shock. Take one of these serrated nuts and thread that all the way down, like that, all the way down. I'm going to put one of the springs on, and then you're going to thread the shock end all the way into it until it stops. Okay, and then tighten up the nut and put one of these tops on. It just snaps into place. You got these two little tabs. Make sure you line it up and just push it in until it pops. Okay, and there you have it. You're going to do this 8 times. Okay, next, to install the shocks, you're going to put a 27 millimeter bolt through the top, one of these brass spacers, and a washer. That spacer is going to go right up through there like that. And you're going to install it on the center hole here. And then the other shock on the center hole here. With using one of these flanged serrated nuts. Go ahead and put that on there, tighten it up. Get the other one on and tighten it up. And just snap it to the ball that's on the axle there. Just like that. Okay, and then you continue to the other 4 corners. Other 3 corners. Alright, so now I've taken the ESC and I've installed this switch on the chassis and installed the motor wires. On the front motor, I've got the yellow to yellow and blue to green. And on the back motor, I've got the blue to yellow and yellow to green. Alright, now you can take part number A7, the electronics tray, and mount that up in there with 4 screws on the corners. Make sure you've got the motor wires coming up through the slit there. Go ahead and put the hex adapters on. Then you've got these special wheel adapters. They go on over the hex. And mount your wheels and tires. Make sure you've got 2 left sides and 2 right sides. Make sure that you've got the tread direction going properly. And those go right over that adapter, and those 5 pins there go in the holes on the adapter. Go ahead and put your mounting your nuts on, and you're ready to go. Just need to finish up the body, and you're ready to run this thing. Yeah, I still need to paint the body, but I figured I'd take it for a quick bash around just to try it out before